One of the events that PPS has that we have on a monthly basis on the fourth Friday of every month is reimagining chronic pain. And for those of us who suffer from chronic pain, and many vets do, as we know, it's a really, really good event each month. Every time I go, I learn something and gain a lot from going there. The people who participate in it range from everyday Joes to professionals who have been dealing with chronic pain for years, professionally or personally. I really recommend that you go. The next one will be January 28th at 7 p.m.
Today's show is going to be basically just checking in with people about the holidays. Usually this time is hard for a lot of people, especially when we're having a lot of time to ourselves, contemplating about who isn't there and whatnot. So checking in with each other. Bruno, Armand, and myself are going to talk about just our own experiences struggling through the holidays and tools and whatnot that we found that have been beneficial for ourselves. And hopefully share some information with people, and hopefully from that be able to improve people's quality of life, at least in some way, give some people some context. For myself, if I'm going to kick this off, I remember 2011, I came home from Afghanistan. It was Thanksgiving. We got home probably beginning of November, so just freshly back. And Thanksgiving, pretty standard way we would do it every year, just a group of people hanging out at the house. But I was just not myself. I remember specifically just not feeling connected with anyone. I wanted to be separate. I wanted to be away. I just was not feeling what was going on. I didn't want to be social. I couldn't put my finger on it. And I remember I spent the whole evening upstairs in like a bedroom, just laying down by myself. That was like my very first encounter with like a big episode of depression. At the time, I couldn't even put a name on it. It was just interesting because I've heard of depression before, but before then, it's not something I've ever had any real context to be able to frame it in my mind. That I remember was my first holiday, just immediately coming back from deployment, just feeling just so separate from everyone and just not even wanting to connect. From that point on, just a lot of my days were just using alcohol to put myself to bed every evening, just drinking as much as I could just to help me go to sleep. Was not social, was not a very happy person or someone you'd enjoy being around. But from then to now, I was very fortunate to run into a fellow at a PTSD group. He gave me this paper about Hemisync and why it works. And it's a declassified CIA document. And it was just kind of it was an interesting, weird read. So I checked it out. It was interesting, but it works. And something that I started implementing is meditation using this Hemisync. I got to tell you, with anxiety, depression, while also taking a nightstand full of pharmaceuticals, just the mind is not at a place of rest to be able to take an inventory and really get a grasp on things. At least mine wasn't. It was just such a relief. Meditating in tandem with listening to these Hemisync recordings was so beneficial because I had what a lot of people call monkey mind and just was unable to get my mind to quiet down and actually figure out where to put things. And I feel like after I've had this for a while and would continually meditate with these tools of Hemisync, it's not that I'm no longer having these memories or having these thoughts, having these troubled times, but I know where to put everything, and I could take things out and I could reconnect with these emotions and these pains and these situations, and they'll take me back, but they're not constantly out, that they're always part of my every moment. I'm able to put some of these things away. From that point, seeing how effective these recordings were in the practice of meditation, at least, I started applying these in tandem with psychedelics, mostly with psilocybin, LSD, doing Hemisync meditations, having like a journal and writing down my own state of mind, expectations of my healing, what I wanted to do, being very deliberate with what I wanted, and journaling it all down, and then taking that into these DMT trips. And immediately when I would come out of them, I'd write down what I experienced, and if it answered what I was looking for, or if it showed me anything. This practice was very much improvised. However, though, I can't help but feel that we accidentally stumbled upon this very effective method. And I'm sure the bolts could be tightened, the practice could be perfected, but gosh, I just can't keep my mouth shut about this effective experience that I've had, because it's pulled me away from the very edge. I contemplated suicide for the longest time, and I never actually got to the point that I took anything into my hands to get it done. But I was always fed up, and now I'm at, my mindset is just so different that I'm now able to realize how much there is to experience and enjoy and to get out of this life, instead of saying there's nothing here for me anymore, let's just end it, let's just get this over with. These simple methods that I've applied to my life have just been so beneficial. And if anyone has any questions, I'm going to be posting up a link to a Spotify playlist with a collection of these Hemisync recordings. One of them is Schumann's resonance, which is just like the vibration of the planet. If that's something you want to connect with, I heard people say that it helps with grounding. There's a recording called Wave One. It's a guided meditation. It's very simple. And in the recording, the person that's guiding you through it is also explaining the science to you. So it's being very straightforward with their methodology. So I'm going to be posting a link for that.
People might be asking, what is Hemisync? Just very briefly. Hemisync was developed by Robert Monroe. He patented it, but it's used by many other people now. It's binaural beats. What that is you're hearing in your headphones. Typically, you can do it with speakers, but it's better with headphones. There will be in the background some low music. If someone's giving a verbal meditation, there'll be some music in the background, and each ear has a different frequency, being sub-perceptual, but it's there. And there's a different beat in each ear, and your brain will entrain to the difference between those beats. And it will put you into a delta or gamma or other wave form, which is highly conducive to meditative states. It like pops you into it, and it's pretty amazing.
So the phenomena is called frequency following response. So you're having two different frequencies played in each ear. Your brain will entrain itself and mimic the one in the center. And so these recordings are made deliberately so that when your brain trains to the frequency in the middle, I think a lot of them are syncing you up to like a theta brainwave, which is meditative for the most part. But I believe that they have a range of different ones for different purposes. Just sitting down and meditating, I wasn't really getting anywhere. Sitting down with this 15, 20 minutes, I mean, it does take some time. I put a blindfold on and I just lay down in the dark, and but you do click into a state. Your perception of time is different. I feel like I have a lot more time to go through what I'm trying to work through. And I'm at a point that when I do close my eyes, meditate, if I'm in my car and I'm like, before I get out and go do something, I could sit down in my seat, close my eyes, and I have at my disposal a workshop in a sense, and being able to put things where they need to be so that my baggage isn't falling off and getting all over everybody. But yeah, thank you, John, for getting some clarification on what it is.
Yeah, I was struggling with suicidal ideation and depression even before I got out. I was quite, in my mind, I was like, oh, it's just gonna be better once I have my freedom, once I get out. And I saved like almost 2 months of terminal leave up for when I got out. During that, I was traveling with a best friend and in a beautiful place in Thailand, and still feeling super depressed and not wanting to have fun. So I kind of made it clear that it wasn't my external environment that was the main cause of this. And yeah, I got just fed up. And then when I came back to the States, went to the VA, basically asked for some help, got prescribed a pill, which I didn't take very long, but that was kind of their solution. And yeah, I feel like I had relief with alcohol, having fun with that, kind of getting out of my head. And I kind of feel like I just slogged through until, I just found psychedelics, to be honest. I got lucky, had extremely profound first experience. From there, that led me to be interested in the mind and consciousness. And I went down a path of meditation, like yoga, including pranayama. That was extremely helpful for me because like you, Alex, said, the monkey mind going all the time. You only have access to your own inner state. So however that is normal to you. So I didn't even realize I was thinking incessantly. So mindfulness talks about the nature of self, and it really helped. Yeah. Fast forward till now, I'm just extremely happy, getting curious about actually the mechanics of what's going on. A lot of that through coaching and other avenues, just getting really curious about why people make the decisions they make, or why I make the decisions I make, why I feel the emotions I feel. And is really getting curious about the mechanics of all that has been extremely beneficial.
I got out in 2008 from the Marine Corps, December 2008. So at the height of the recession, essentially, and trying to figure it out, started going to school, eventually got, graduated and trying to figure stuff out. And I knew that mental health field was something that I was really interested in and what I wanted to pursue because I really enjoyed it. Graduated, I was working at an office, a political office at the time, and a couple of friends were telling me about this group that they get together with and they do some stuff. And I'm like, well, really not my thing, guys. So thank you very much. But then I kept hearing about it and I really respected these guys. They're all veterans. One of them specifically is a little bit older, but very, very accomplished, very grounded individual, somebody that I saw as a community leader, somebody that I respected a lot. He told me about it. He told me how what he's learned about these men's groups, that they do this every once in a while, maybe once or twice a year. And it's something that they wanted to invite me because they saw that I could benefit from it. I'm like, all right, well, I'll give it a try. And so got into this men's group. And I remember at some point, the plant that we did was Kana, which is a South African succulent, and it's legal. And I remember like looking up and two of my friends were just hugging. And at the time I was thinking, what the hell did I get myself into? Because these guys are hugging for the last 5 minutes and what the hell is going on here? So I remember just like getting a little worried. And then I think that's when this plant hit my brain. And then all of a sudden, 5 minutes later, I'm hugging this one of my friends for like 5 minutes and thinking to myself, now I get it, So it was just a very beautiful experience that I had. But the main thing with that is that at the time I was married with my wife for about 12 years, give or take. Our relationship was pretty good, but not great. We were just, trying to figure stuff out and everything. We were married, but our relationship was just not that it didn't have that bond of the husband and wife that you would like to envision in your mind, And so I remember coming home the next day and she saw the difference right off the bat. And I felt a huge weight just leave my shoulders and a new type of consciousness or a new type of thinking entered my mind. And since then, my wife often says that there's a pre-Bruno and then a post-Bruno of just how our relationship is. And it's a lot more loving. We say, I love you a lot more. I specifically say that because before that, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I would say I love you to her. I probably said I love you to her like 3 times in the 12 years. I mean, that's how bad it was, And now every single day, like almost every hour, and really mean it. So that's the power that I experience with these types of medicines and these plants. And I'm back to school studying them, figuring out ways to help legalize access for people to be able to do this, that want to do this in a safe way. And that's one of the things that we want to talk about is how to properly look for these safe environments, the people that you can trust, the people that are going to take you into these altered states of consciousness where you're just pretty broken up, you're open. A lot of things you can be influenced in many ways. And the point of these medicines are to influence you in a way that you're going to enhance your life in a way that you want to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish and be better with yourself and be more comfortable with yourself, So that's just one of the things that we wanted to talk about today is just that aspect of it. And also like how these holidays, how things are for us. I know that at work, where I work with a lot of combat veterans. There's a lot of seasonal depression. We go through a lot of anniversaries during this time where we're away from our family, or people that were there are no longer there, and we have to struggle with that. A lot of us are away from our family, so we just don't have people to hang out with during the holidays. We wanted to check in and go from there. Yeah, thanks.
Do you want to talk about Ra?
Yeah, of course. So while I was in school, they always throw out like a lot of theories and stuff like that, and like acronyms that people can use. So I developed this acronym for myself, my personal self, and I've shared it with some people, and it seems to work. And I love Stoicism. a great deal. So I think that this is something that's kind of stoic in nature, and I use it anytime that I get triggered or I'm angry, or sometimes I forget to use it, but it's useful. So I developed this acronym for myself that I like to share. That's RRA or RRAA. So the first thing is raw. So when you get triggered, you have to acknowledge, or you have to witness your raw emotions, right? What are you going through, right? What are those things that are, just acknowledge them, identify them for the raw reality that they are, or the raw that they are. Then look at the reality of things. So for example, sometimes my wife comes home, she's a trauma nurse. She comes home just in a state where she's a little bit more heightened up. Maybe she's annoyed because she had a lot of patients that just were very triggering, you know? So I have to acknowledge the reality of the state of mind that she's coming home with. And I have to understand that and not take it personal, right? Sometimes, you know, my wife will, you know, shoot some personal things at me after coming home from work, but I have to be good at deflecting them. So it's the reality of it is that I have to understand that her job is very triggering. It's very rough on her, and she's around a lot of death. So it takes a toll on her. But if I take that personal because she's coming home, then I'm adding to the stress of the house, you know, and that's not what I want to do. So I want to acknowledge the reality of what's going on in that instant of why I'm being triggered or why I'm upset, right? So I looked at the raw emotions that I'm going through. I look at the reality of what's really going on. And then I do an assessment of what I should be doing. Maybe what I should be doing is just taking an aspirin from the wife and then, you know, walking away for a while and then coming back, you know, and then act. So the last one is act. So it's raw emotions, what the reality of a situation is, assess and act. Typically we want to act right away. Something happens, and us vets, especially Marines and other guys in the infantry, we want to act right off the bat, because that's what we were trained to do, is to act right away. Immediate action drills, right? Which is really good in many ways, but when you're triggered, when you're upset and you have to make a decision, or you want to talk to somebody in a certain way, or you want to develop a relationship, whatever the case is, you want to be able to detach your emotions from what's going on and be able to better ground yourself. So this is a tool that I use and I share with some people for them to use whenever they're going through some type of emotion that is triggering them or that is unpleasant. So this is what I use, and it's helped me a lot. And hopefully it helps people, you know, all of you that are on here, whenever you are triggered. Just this little tool that I came up with and I use now. So
I am going to post right now a couple of things to our Qigong with Damon D'Amato video on the Portland Psychedelic Society's YouTube channel for people looking for like some breath work exercises. We went through a couple of different things on there that I found to be pretty beneficial. I've actually applied them into my morning routine. Another tool is a link to Amazon. I know Amazon does a lot of, has their own video platform, but that link is to a series called Couch to Confidence. I know even myself for the longest time, I just wasn't wanting to get out of bed, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And just the whole body, mind, soul trifecta, you don't want to leave anything out. A veteran that's bringing themselves out of a hole, the path forward is only done deliberately. And even just making little tiny steps into just getting used to moving your body more, reading, stuff like that, just taking your life back in a deliberate way. There's baby steps involved. I want to throw out a couple little things just so that people have access to them.
Alex, I just want to ask you guys just a quick question. Do you guys do anything specifically to help you out during this time? If you guys are having any type of seasonal depression or anything, what do you guys usually do to kind of help you past that? Is there little techniques that you guys use or anything like that? Like physical fitness, for example, could be one, or meditation. You guys talked about that.
I feel like when I would get an episode of depression, it could last sometimes up to like a month or so. So what I'm doing now, if I was to get into that headspace of just being in the dark and being down, I would want to probably lay down. I'd probably just want to lay down and be out and away from everyone and everything. But an easy thing to do while I'm there is putting on those Hemisync, putting on my earbuds and listening to some some Hemisync and go inside. I think introspection, it sometimes could be very helpful in these situations if you're deliberately trying to pick apart why you feel the way that you do, and identifying that it's irrational to feel that way about different things. So it kind of could help break things apart. But if I do find myself in a bad place with depression, getting outside, and thankfully I do live in beautiful Oregon, and I have trails access very close to my home, just a simple walk outside and reconnecting, it is definitely an easy way to just flip that headspace on its head, so to speak. Just that change of scenery, getting connected outside, I've benefited from. Routine of microdosing has been beneficial into keeping such situations even just at bay, to keep from even happening in the first place. I feel like I've been on a pretty good streak as far as not being in a place that I'm feeling in the dark.
For me, I think the biggest thing is reaching out. For me, it's easy to be, or it used to be easy for me to be depressed when I'm by myself, can retreat in my hole, no one notices. I was super lucky getting the poor best friend just moved back to my hometown at the same time, and I think that really saved me. Through my hallucination is like a lot of the guys who are struggling so much, like getting out of the Marine Corps, especially infantry units, like it's the loss of tribe, loss of brotherhood. So I think finding even just a friend that you can be real with, I think is just humongous. So just even if it's long distance, keeping a couple just authentic, real connections as best you can.
Just this being the Portland Psychedelic Society, I do feel like the spotlight is on psychedelics. And I feel like I would be beside myself to not acknowledge just the benefit in using what I can understand most of them are entheogens with the intent to be introspective, and just how using different tools has been beneficial. And I know just the times that we're in right now, it's not very widely accepted, and some people are still on the fence about it. Some people don't really have a lot of information. And I know that there's some groups that try to get around the whole legality. I've heard of various names, said like Church of Consciousness types of names that are trying to use the umbrella of religion to try to get around and get people access to different types of psychedelics. I think psychedelics is a great tool to break this apart. And I might be a very bold statement, and I've been kind of hesitant to actually let these words come out of my mouth, but I feel like psychedelics is the tools, the path to ending PTSD and ending depression for I don't want to say everyone, but for just especially combat PTSD, knowing where to put things, and coming to a place that you are at peace with yourself and your life and where you are in the world. They're just such a benefit to them. And I encourage people that if you're curious and you feel like psychedelics might be in your path to healing, I definitely encourage you to pursue that path. So when someone thinks about these things and they're considering these options for themselves, things to consider. The VA was, I believe, offering ketamine for treatment for some time. However, they don't do that anymore. I think that might have lasted a year and a half. So there's like some controversy going on within the VA as far as administering ketamine to people with depression and whatnot. And I think you needed to have a number of pharmaceutical medications that they assign to you that have failed before they even allow you to even question the possibility of ketamine. But with not even just focusing specifically on ketamine, I kind of want to bring it up with Armand and Bruno, things to consider, like your own mental health diagnosis, your medication. If you're pursuing a place that is offering such tools to be available to you, is the place legit? Like looking into it like that, and then just what comes with that is set and settings. Do you guys have any notes as far as to tell someone that's considering psychedelics as like a tool for their future? Like,
yeah, I think I can start. I think humongous advocate for psychedelic and entheogenic use for healing, but we are I think the way it's talked about like other drugs, and the context in which you take the psychedelic is so important. It's like really hard to overstate, and especially if people are in a bad place. I think it's so important to have a sitter. It's important to have, like, honestly, I would like literally really recommend people hire somebody to talk to them before the trip, after the trip, or if they have the means, like come somewhere like where I work in Jamaica, like legal soul retreats, we have mental health professionals to really help people make sense of their experiences and to use it to help heal. And psilocybin is the main event, but really the group dynamic plus really talking about it and the integration part is really so key. I really don't think psychedelics by themselves, sometimes that's enough. You're in a place where you can take it, your resources to frame it, take what you learned. But I really think putting the extra effort, time, energy into having someone help is really, it's like, you're in a whole different game. It's like a completely different experience.
Yeah, like finding someone that knows the path, is familiar. Your work in Jamaica, have you found any commonalities as far as habits or things people do prior to taking psychedelics that has proven beneficial? Like for me, what I learned from just not doing it and then one day journaling and actually writing down so that I don't forget. Once I did that, I was like, I'm so stupid, because I realized how beneficial it was with going forward and retaining what I got past. Do a lot of people journal while you're doing this work in Jamaica? Are people fasting, or what are different types of things that people are applying to their practice?
The journaling for sure. We give everyone a journal, and we have we talk before the dose, and we have a day just for integration. So yeah, people are definitely taking a lot of notes after their trip in the morning, and then talking about it with like people who are really, really good at helping people frame their experiences. And yeah, I would say there's no really other standard practices we're doing other than that. I would say we're really tailored to the individual of what came up in their trip. So we don't have like a standard frame it like this or do this practice. So it really depends what comes up for them and what they're working on.
A lot of people will see psychedelics and they'll contemplate if it's like the miracle pill. You're like, you take it once and you're good. And I feel like maybe for some people that situation might be true. For myself, it was very much like a practice to apply and change. Anything interesting to note from just what you've seen and experienced from just putting this stuff into practice after so much time?
Yeah, a lot of it depends on how much work people have done prior to getting down there, like knowing what their issues are and these kind of things. To me, it was really surprising is how it's fairly common for someone like childhood sexual trauma is way more common than I think I would have thought. And obviously maybe there's a skewed population. Yeah, so that's why like a lot of people come down fragment of a memory of a childhood sexual abuse and then really get a whole lot of clarity, sometimes a form of re-experiencing it or re-experiencing the physical parts of it, or the like body sensations. So in those cases, it's paramount that they get professional help post-retreat, and we help them do that. But yeah, in my experience, like psilocybin is so good with just trauma in general. It's we call it reactive. So whatever has the most emotional charge within you can come to the surface for healing. And sometimes you're aware of what that is, coming into the retreat, you might know what that thing is. Sometimes you don't. For myself, sometimes it's a surprise, like, oh, some stuff I swept under the rug comes up and my nervous system reaction of what that was. And I think it comes up for healing for me to let go. Yeah, so I think so much trauma is stored in the body, which I think most people either don't know at all or just really underestimate that. So the body keeps a score, situation. I just see that front and center, like undeniably, time and time again.
Yeah, and if anyone is looking for just a good source of information, Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions, they got a website, vetsolutions.org. They have like an e-course that is it's very dense with information as far as talking about different types of mental health that come from military combat. And then they have a course on psychedelics and different types of psychedelics that have been used in different ways, different people's individual problems and how they've been able to benefit from it. It's really dense with information, and I highly recommend people going through it, because I think if everyone was on par with all the information that these people are providing, then I think we're cooking with gas at that point.
Yeah, one of the things that I do want to bring up, because you mentioned it, and I think it's really important, especially when it comes to education, is just understanding if you do have a diagnosis or if you have a history of family diagnosis of like schizophrenia or something like that, you do have to be very, very careful that you understand that you might be putting yourself at taking certain types of psychedelics without really diving deep into the research and understanding if this is safe for you or not. I know that there are some cases, doesn't happen often, but there are some cases where these things might trigger something that is really unwanted. So you might put yourself in a situation that you don't want to be in, especially if you're with people that really don't know what they're doing. And there's a lot of people, I mean, anytime that I talk about psychedelics in the community, somebody's like, oh, you know, my shaman in Utah or my shaman in whatever, like there's shamans everywhere now. And you have to really understand that they call this the psychedelic renaissance, right? And there's people wanting to do this all the time and wanting to provide these services to people. But if they don't know what they're doing, if they don't have proper training, if they don't have access to medical health care, some people might have very adverse reaction during the process that maybe it's very beneficial that they go through that process. But if you don't have the proper training or quick reactions to being able to get this person to some type of treatment center or anything like that, then you can really mess somebody up. So you have to really do a lot of homework to figure out, okay, who do I trust if something happens where I need some medical attention? Do I trust this person that is going to take care of me, or are they going to try to save themselves from possibly being, you know, getting in trouble with the law or something like that? And you have to ask yourself these questions before, you know, taking these substances with people that quote unquote call themselves shamans or trained or anything like that. Do they have a proper protocol in case something happens? Is that voiced? How are they going to take care of me? I think that's really important. Another thing that I've been seeing as well is just this kind of cultish type of vibe that I get from some groups. Like, you know, they put all their trust in this one guy or gal that calls herself a shaman, like, and I'm here to heal you and all this stuff. And you have to be careful with that as well. Like, this is growing, and you're very, like I said in the beginning, like, you're very open to certain things, and you can be influenced while you're in these psychedelic states of doing things that maybe you don't really want to do, but all of a sudden people are inserting things in your mind or whatever the case is. So again, you have to like really do your research and ask around if this person or if this group is credible, because as much healing as it has, there's also a lot of adverse effects, right? I mean, there's history of this in our own government, utilizing LSD in the 50s and 60s, I think, MK Ultra, where they did influence a lot of people to do things that really are not healthy. You know what I'm saying? So there's potential for harm, and you have to make sure if you want to heal, if you're opened up that much, that you want to make sure that the group that you're going with is credible, right? There's groups out there now that are we're fortunate that they're coming out of that they're being created. You know, like we've mentioned veterans of war. There's veterans exploring treatment solutions and heroic heart projects, whereas these organizations, I mean, many of us have worked with them and we trust them, and they're going to take you and they're going to take you somewhere where it's legal to do, where they have the proper medical protocols in case something happens, and then you come back and they have some type of system to where you have some type of integration process coming back. That's what you want to look for, you know, is groups like that. Those are my 2 cents as far as what, if you're curious about this, how do I start thinking about who I want to research or who I want to do this with?
Psychedelics isn't exactly like a magic one and done type of deal, but more just as time goes on, more and more people are coming out and saying that they've benefited just so much from these. So, I mean, for everyone's individual situation, do the research, take advantage of these resources, and look into your own situation and find the best path. I can't help but just think of like that there's absolutely a path for healing for everyone. With being well informed, I posted a couple of comments ago in the chat, the thirdwave.co, that is co, it's not .com. And just on that website, you go to education and they're talking about psychedelics or microdosing specifically, but they'll show you just a laundry list of different types of substances. And when you click on individual ones, they'll give you like an overview, but the table of contents is so dense with studies and reviews of just different outcomes people have had from them. And you're just setting yourself up for success when you have this information and you create a path a deliberate path towards healing when you're just well informed like this. Just want to encourage people to take advantage of these. What if someone's interested in and is in a dark place, has PTSD, they're working a job now, they're in a state that's not like Oregon, and that's like moving towards a path of opening up the gates. You know, they have a urinalysis. They have a drug test to make. They're at the point is, do I even explore this mental health option, or do I not? So I kind of wanted to touch on that just a little bit, because I feel like context matters. And I think that when people are making a well-informed decision, they're just that much more prepared to give themselves optimum result. And drug tests for like a standard occupation, I feel like it might be beneficial to just note that these types of tests, what they're set up to highlight are uses of stuff like marijuana, cocaine, opiates, amphetamines, benzodiazepines, barbiturates, ecstasy, oxycodone, and the stuff and the like. But something as far as like psilocybin, LSD, DMT, do you guys have any insight as far as those? I mean, those wouldn't come up on a test, right? That those aren't even in the realm of what these tests are structured to be highlighting.
Typically not. From my understanding, typically drug tests don't really look for mushrooms. Not 100% sure. I've heard that it is, but I've also read that it isn't. I'm not sure, but I believe, I'm almost certain that DMT is naturally occurring in your own body. So even if you,
It is.
yeah. So even if you like take ayahuasca and you get tested, I don't think there's a test to, test you for ayahuasca. I think it's pulse dementia. Somebody said like, DMT is naturally occurring, so everybody's carrying. So, it's one of those things. But one thing that I would venture in exploring is, if you're in a dark space and you want to feel compelled, like you want to do this, you want to take that step forward, maybe contemplating if your workplace is attributing to that dark place that you're in, and maybe you need to find something else, and maybe this is an opportunity for you to dive into something else that is going to make you more fulfilled, and where you're going to be able to take one of these trips somewhere and heal without fearing that you're going to lose your job and your livelihood, and that's going to be on your record, and like all these other things, so that's one of the things that I would explore, on top of just the legality and ways to get around in case they do urinalysis, is explore and fuck this job. I'm going to go somewhere else where I'm appreciated and I like it.
Right. Yeah. The thing is, though, is just there's just every type of person out there, basically. Yeah, it's like the full spectrum. So it's like we can't assume in some cases, absolutely. I'm sure some people's jobs are what causing a lot of their pain, but we definitely want to at least have the information available for people to make the best decisions they can for themselves.
Sure. I'm sorry, real quick. The first time that I did psychedelics, I was working at, like I said, I was working at a U.S. Senate office. Had they known that even if it was legal, had they known that I did psychedelics, they wouldn't have been happy. Put it that way. So, I took the plunge. So I say that, but I did enjoy my job, and it did add value, and it did make me a better employee. So yeah, I mean, but it's still something to consider, is that aspect. And you're absolutely right, Alex. Like you have to put all of those things into consideration. And some people aren't in that place where they can just get up and leave. Like, I'm well aware of that, for sure. I found this link on the MAPS website. It's resources, but one of the really cool things about this is, say you are very compelled to have a psychedelic experience, either by yourself or with a group of friends, and you just can't figure out how to integrate all of that stuff, or you just, it broke you up a little bit too much, or opened you up a little bit too much. This link here gives you information on, maybe there's a therapist out there that can help you integrate your psychedelic experience, which is really powerful, because they're not going to take you on a psychedelic experience, but they'll help you integrate what you went through, and they have experience with psychedelics and how to go about that. They're not going to be judgmental. So if I go to the VA right now and say, hey, I just did a huge ayahuasca ceremony and I don't know what to do with it, they'll be like, hey, you shouldn't be doing that crap. What's wrong with you? That's different, right? These therapists are trained in psychedelic integration. So I'll post that up, and I think it's a good resource to have if you just don't know how to integrate. You just can't put things together. There are therapists or integration groups that help you kind of piece those things together.